Hello, everyone, and welcome to the third episode of the Six Yards podcast, where we discuss all things Premier League, and we have a lot to discuss this week. This week started off with a game filled with hitting the bar, and it was finally decided with a decision by VAR, as Manchester United went home with all 3 points from the Amex Stadium. VAR and handball decisions will be featuring quite regularly in today's podcast, none more so than when we discuss Tottenham, who could only go back home with a single point, much to the chagrin of Jose Mourinho. West Brom almost pulled off the biggest upset of the month, scoring three first half goals against Chelsea before a spirited second half performance ensured the spoils would be shared. Manchester City were dealt a huge early blow in their quest to win back the Premier League with a 5-2 hammering by Leicester, which included, funnily enough, a hat trick of penalties. And finally, the week ended with Monday night football action in the form of Liverpool and Arsenal, where Liverpool eventually ground out a 3-1 win and continued to set the early pace in the challenge for the Premier League title. Today with me, I have Obro, Supreet, Shayan, Manan, Naveen, and Karthik to discuss everything that has happened so far. To begin with, we will start with the Liverpool versus Arsenal clash, and I would invite Supreet and Obro to discuss this match. Hi, guys.
Hey Susha.
Hey, hi, hi.
Right. So, Obro, I think considering your team won the match, I will begin with you. What were your thoughts on the performance by the Liverpool team?
It was a very good performance, right? So every win is important. So it was quite flawless. Other than that Robertson mishap, in games it does happen. You lose a little bit of concentration, but it was a very good performance by the team overall. Considering we were missing a few starters, but I think Liverpool are quite well backed up in most of the areas now. I think the team did fairly well. Again showed the mentality monsters thing, right? Where they talked
Yeah.
about got a goal and then immediately they came back within I think 2 or 3 minutes they scored the equalizer and just after that scored the other one. Yeah, so I mean, given everything, it was quite a good weekend. Even Jota came and scored his first goal. Right, so even that was great. So yeah, overall it was quite a satisfying weekend.
Yeah, it was. It surely was. So, Preet, I think it wasn't enough, not satisfying enough for your team. But what would you say on that performance against Liverpool?
Honestly, not too disappointed. I had, I mean, I was hoping that it would end at 3-1, which it did. If it was Unai Emery's team or even Arsene Wenger's teams in one of his final seasons, I think we would have lost by 4-1 or 5-1 or maybe even 5-0. Um, I don't think we played badly. Um, Given that Liverpool are in the form of their lives right now. We didn't really I wasn't expecting a win. A draw would have been probably a good result, but I think overall I'm not too dissatisfied. This team still has a long way to go. We still have 6 days before the transfer window closes. We definitely need some reinforcements in midfield, be it a defensive midfielder or an attacking midfielder. I hope we get one in each position. But yeah, overall, I'm not too disappointed given we've got a pretty terrible record against top six sides, and we've been smashed at a lot of stadiums around by big teams. So 3-1 result is not very bad according to me.
Interesting. Interesting. So, guys, I think the game was for majority of the time, at least till I think the last 15-20 minutes or even the second half, it was finely balanced in terms of Arsenal always seemed to have a chance, and of course there was this very big opportunity that Lacazette had a one-on-one where Allison stood up and was worth his money. So what would you say would be the like a turning point in the game? And also, do either of you believe Mane deserved a red card? Because that's something that's been a hot topic of discussion on social media with varying views. So I think Obro, you can go first, and then
Yeah, so I think one of the turning point was, I would also say that that first goal that was scored, right, that we conceded. and Robertson scored. So after that, I think everyone got their concentration back, and it was like, let's get serious mode on and get it get it back
Yeah.
immediately. There was more running, more focus, so that definitely helped. Right, and also obviously Lacazette missing that, or Allison stood up to that. That also helped, right? Because if it was to do, it might have been tricky, right?
Yes.
Uh, uh, getting in that. So I think that is one factor that if instead of Laka it was Aubameyang, I think it was a sure shot goal, right? I mean, I think he's much
Yeah.
more a clinical finisher than Laka is. So
Yeah.
yeah, so that definitely was a turning point, right? And coming to the second point, yeah, Mane, I think it was a prudent call, right? I won't say whether it was a correct call or a incorrect call. I would say it was a prudent call because we have seen red cards given for such offenses, right? To be honest, these days, right?
Yeah.
These
Yeah.
days, red cards are given for almost anything. Uh,
Yeah.
but all that he was trying, to be very honest, was trying to protect the ball using his body, right? Which
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
part of football. But on the thing that he intended to was to give a push to the body of the other player, which by mistake ended up hitting up the neck or the face. Right.
Yes.
So I think it was a prudent call. That's my feeling. I mean, I'm sure Supre's feeling would be different, but yeah,
Yes.
that's what I feel.
Okay. Supreet, do you have any sympathy for Mane, or are you on the other side of that scale?
Sympathy for what he didn't get sent off. No, but honestly, I think a red card probably would have been harsh. But given given how referees are just giving away penalties these days, maybe red card was the right decision. Um, yeah, I don't think it was a red card. A yellow was probably the right result. He didn't. I think it was a rash challenge, but I don't think it merited a red card really.
Okay.
Um, in terms of turning point, I don't really think there was a turning point. Liverpool actually dominated position. They had like 66% of the possession right from the start. Um, I think Klopp won the tactical battle against Arteta on the night.
Yeah.
He had better personal, that's for sure. I'm not sure why we dropped Ceballos from the West Ham game. He did bring some. I mean, he's the more creative player compared to
Yeah.
Elneny. I think Arteta went with a pragmatic approach. He wanted to have a midfield that could contain Liverpool, and that's why he probably started with Elneny. Um,
Okay.
and he bought Ceballos late on
Yeah.
with about
Yes.
15, I think 15-20 minutes to go. Um, I honestly don't think there was a turning point. I think it was a clear tactical win for Klopp. A few things that I noticed was Liverpool shifted to a back three when one of their fullbacks was attacking.
Yeah.
So it was either Robertson or Alexander Arnold. What that meant was, that gave them a lot of strength on the flanks, especially the right flank when Alexander Arnold was attacking, because Tierney seemed a little out of sorts, defending against Salah.
Yeah.
One thing I noticed, which I think Liverpool have changed, is Van Dijk playing long balls. I've not seen a lot of that. I don't think there was a lot of that last season. On the game against Arsenal, he played a couple of long balls to Salah, and the first of which, the first goal actually came off that. Um, but apart from that, I think on the left as well, Mane and Robertson, double teaming on Bellerin, holding
Okay.
again off the pace. You cannot expect him to deal against pacey forwards like
Yeah.
Mane.
Yes.
Liverpool. One thing that I really liked was they pressed high up the pitch. And given how Arsenal now play out of the starting from the penalty box, it just gave us too little. I mean, it just gave us very little wriggle room to actually build a meaningful attack.
Okay.
And that, I mean, that kind of that kind of also helped them win the ball back very easily in those
Yeah,
dangerous positions,
yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, it was a clear tactical win for Klopp. I think we should have changed things in the second half earlier. We should have probably bought on Pepe instead of Willian, uh, primarily because Pepe is um, uh, you don't know what he's going to do next, right?
Yeah.
Willian is a more direct midfielder. You know what you're going to get out of him over the course of 90 minutes. A little bit of flair from Pepe would have probably added some creativity in midfield.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, too little, too late. I think 3-1 was a pretty fair result at the end of the day.
That was
Also,
sorry. Yeah,
if I
sorry, Abro, go ahead.
yeah, if I could interject a little bit, I think Arsenal missed a plot where they were trying to build from the back and they were very slow.
Yeah,
If you look at the first goal, how Liverpool conceded, and the point that you said that with the two fullbacks going up, we are like three at the back, and if there's a very pacey attack, there's always a chance to open it up like it happened in the first goal, right? The Arsenal opened it up very fast, and and there was a cutback, and in the hurry to rush back, Robertson did that mistake. So I think Arsenal could have utilized that opportunity to try something like that a few more times, but their build up from the back was very slow, very sluggish,
Yeah.
and that gave Liverpool the opportunity to cut the ball inside their half itself.
and I think that's where we missed Ceballos in the first half.
Midfield. Yeah.
So see, Ceballos is not the most creative midfielder out there, but when he did come on, he played a couple of through balls. The one was to Lacazette,
Yeah.
which he short straight at Allison. There was another one to Nketiah where he was marginally offside. Um, I think maybe adding Ceballos to the midfield would have probably given us a little more going ahead. But I fear that if we were more adventurous, I think we would have probably considered another goal or two. So yeah, I mean, um, we have a very limited midfield right now. So I'm kind of satisfied with the. I mean, I'll take 3-1 loss. I wouldn't say I'm satisfied, but I'll take the 3-1 loss.
Interesting. Interesting. So, Preet, so I think you did bring up the point about Ceballos and also in terms of Pepe. I wanted to get your views on what you thought about Gabriel not starting because he's been a new signing and he's been doing well. Is there was there a reason, tactical reason why Arteta decided to bench him for this match?
I think it was a simple case of protecting a youngster um,
Okay.
and not getting him demoralized against probably the best attack in the Premier League. And I think David Luiz would have probably started the first two games as well. I think Gabriel had to come in because we didn't have any other central defenders.
Okay.
And Luiz actually played really well towards the end of last season against City, against Chelsea in the final, even against Liverpool.
Understand.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I don't think there's anything else to that. It was just um, a decision around protecting your a young centre back.
Understand.
Yeah, and probably fielding a experienced one in place of that and in place of him.
Okay. That's interesting. Oh, bro. So you've Liverpool has gone off to a really good start, 3 out of 3 wins, and crucially, the last 2 wins have been against historically big teams. Especially with all the rivals around you dropping points, be it Manchester City primarily. Uh, how important were these 2 games to set up, the space for the rest of the season for the team?
Yeah, I like the way you say historically big teams. Yeah, so every win is definitely important, right? But
Yeah,
building this initial momentum is very important in order to win the league, right? So even last time, we went off to a flyer, which definitely helped building that initial margin where all
yeah,
the teams are playing catch up.
yeah,
So right now, I think is Everton and Leicester, surprisingly, who are
yeah,
up there winning all the three matches, and they are doing really well, right? So and so yeah, I mean, getting all the points home till now is very important for Liverpool. And more than the win, what really impressed was the kind of authority and the self assurance that the team is playing with, right? I mean, no matter
yeah,
what they have, the self-assurance and the self-belief that they can always win. I mean, even if they concede first, or even for the case for the Leeds match, right? For in the first match where they conceded 3 goals, but
Yeah.
even then they managed to score a fourth one,
Yes.
right? So that is a very important mentality that the team has developed. And at Anfield, especially, where Liverpool has made it the toughest ground to visit, right? Even without the supporters, like I think it's now about 60 league matches in a row where we have not lost.
Yeah.
So it's like quite staggering numbers, right? So getting this initial momentum and building that consistency is very important in terms of winning the league. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I think I don't remember the last time Liverpool lost at home.
Yeah, I think it was against Crystal Palace long back.
Yeah, I think it would have been a completely different team as well. Some of them wouldn't even remember.
Yeah. So imagine Mane, who's been here. This is fourth season. He has not lost a match at home, league
Wow.
match.
But has he
That is
gone unbeaten in a season?
Who might not have. This time, it.
Also, a disclaimer for our listeners: I was not taking a dig on Chelsea or Arsenal when I meant historically big teams. I consider United as well as I think other than City and Liverpool right now, no one can be termed as a big team in the league. So just so that I do not get attacked on social media post this podcast. Uh, right. So Supreet, one final question. You mentioned that Arteta requires a midfielder holding and a attacking midfielder. Do you think he'll get his wish before the closure of this window?
I really hope so. Because with this midfield, I think we're going to struggle the entire season. So we've been starting Xhaka and Ceballos, and that's a partnership that worked well towards the end of last season in very specific circumstances, right?
Yeah.
Um, we had to adopt a particular playing style in order to ensure we got to the final of the FA Cup and win it as well. But expecting that to work in the course of an entire 38 match league season, it's not going to work out, right? We need a few more midfielders to add some beef in the center of the park. Um, so we also need to do some rebalancing of the squad to ensure we have enough homegrown players. So there are going to be a few departures. I
Yeah.
think Torreira is going to leave before the end of the transfer window.
Okay.
Kolasinac is going to leave. I think he's close to joining Leverkusen.
Yeah, he is. He is.
Um, right, and then there is probably a couple of other players might also leave before the window closes. I think Socrates is one of them. In midfield, I think the Liverpool match clearly showed, where we clearly lack. One is a solid defensive midfielder. Xhaka and Ceballos both are transitional midfielders.
Okay.
Elneny is a defensive midfielder, but he's not your archetypal defensive midfielder. He doesn't get into too many tackles. He doesn't break up enough opposition play. He's
Yeah.
more of a tidy midfielder who can actually pass the ball around really well.
Mhm.
And but he's not someone who you would expect a lot out of in a 38 game season, right?
Yeah.
I really hope we do complete the signings of Partey and Awar, or at least one of them. The
Yeah.
urgent need would be an attacking midfielder. I would actually hope that we sign Awar primarily because
Yeah.
we need some creativity in the middle of the park, because I don't see Ozil starting any games this season.
Yeah. I was going to
Um,
mention him. I think
yeah,
he's
and I think Guendouzi also has probably played his last game for us, unless he really impresses in training. Joe Willock and Nelson, like I mentioned in the last podcast, are too young.
yeah.
Yeah, so I think we need, and Willian, like I mentioned earlier, he's been playing on the right. I think he's going to switch a lot between Willian and Pepe for that right
Okay.
side midfield role.
Okay.
Willian again, not very. I wouldn't say an extremely creative midfielder. He's a tidy midfielder who can play up the pitch. So yeah, I really do hope we end up signing one attacking midfielder um, before within the next 5 days rather, before the transfer window closes.
Okay. So that you say is your wish. What if I put you on the spot? What would be your prediction? How many ins? I'll let it be easy. How many total number of transfer ins do you expect in the last 5 days?
Just
If you
one,
had to predict one.
just one midfielder. I don't think we have the budget to uh, splurge on two midfielders. I think it's going to be Awar, who we sign as an attacking midfielder because clearly is a need for the team right now.
Nice, interesting. Thank you for your time, Supreet. Oh, bro, one last question before we let you go. So last season, I don't think any one can be called a title challenger other than Liverpool themselves. Do you expect any possible title challenges to show up this year? And if yes, who? And you're not allowed to
I
say
do
the
wish.
Liverpool B team, and you're not allowed to say that.
I do wish. Last season we did not have a B team actually. This time we still have.
Yeah,
So, but yeah, I mean, as much as I do support Liverpool, right? But at the end of the day, we are football fans. We don't want the league to turn out, like a Munich or a Juventus who are like serial winners, right? We
yeah,
want a competitive league. So maybe cut down the winning margin from 18 of last season to 8 or 10. I think that should be fine. Yeah. So but yeah, but my quick take maybe on the other teams and my fellow friends can comment on that. Right, to be honest, I was very disappointed with City's performance. Right, I think Pep has put himself under too much pressure, and which is reflecting on his team. Right, so
okay,
he obviously needs to get his defense sorted. He has spent about 400, 500 million on the defense alone, probably. I mean, yeah, that's what.
yeah,
So I think it's still not sorted out. So I think he needs to get that sorted before they really do come back. And also with both Aguero and Jesus injured, uh, their goal threat is significantly reduced. So I think I don't know if they already have a backup, and there are a lot of players injured as well, right? So
yeah,
with
yeah. They have a
I
lot
think
of injuries.
yeah.
Yes.
So when once they come back into the squad, I think they're going to be a lot more competitive. City,
Okay.
Chelsea, it will probably take them. They have recruited well, right? Definitely they have recruited well, but maybe it will take them a couple of years to really become title challengers. If you see this Liverpool team as well, so Klopp, this team, Klopp took around 4 to 5 years to build this team from where it was to where it is
Yeah.
currently. So you definitely have to give all this managers that period to build the team that they want.
Yeah.
Arteta, I think at Arsenal has done a fantastic job to turn the team around so quickly from what it was in the Unai Emery days.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it still needs a few signings, as Supreet rightly mentioned, right, to be really title challengers. For Spurs, again, we'll have to see how Bale performs. Right? A lot
Yeah.
depends and rides on that. United, the less said about the better.
Yeah.
Currently, I
I
think
think we
no
can skip
offense.
that part. I think we
Yeah, no offense. But I think there can be a few surprises from Everton, right? I mean, you can
okay.
clearly see
Interesting.
Ancelotti weaving his magic, right? So they
Yeah.
might be a surprise top four contender
I think it's
this
been more
season.
than 40 years since we've seen a Merseyside battle on the top of the table,
Yeah, and actual battle. Yeah,
right? Yeah.
yeah. All right.
So
So,
So yeah,
Obro, do you think Leicester could be a surprise package again this season?
they can be right, but with all Brendan Rodgers teams, they kind of tend to lose the steam, and we have both the brunt of that.
Yeah.
So it happened the last season as well. They have a young team, but how much they can sustain over the period of a season, that needs to be seen because they do not have an out and out striker if Vardy gets injured. So most of the goal threat is from Vardy. So yeah, a lot depends on Vardy and his clinical finishing.
interesting. Thank you, Supreet. Thank you, Obro. Lovely talking to you as always.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Sushant.
Right. Now moving ahead to from a happy Liverpool fan to a very disappointed Manchester City fan. Welcome, Naveen, to the podcast.
Hey, hi,
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 Naveen.
Sushant.
Naveen, so I think the performance on the weekend was quite, I would say, surprising, maybe, or even at least shocking, at least. So, what were your thoughts on the performance, which was quite unlike a Man City performance that we've come to know about?
Yeah, true. So it was the first time I saw City concede five
Yeah.
goals, and I think the last time they conceded five was back in
Okay.
2003.
Whoa.
So very difficult to watch, uh, and especially in spite of having 70% possession, we conceded 5 goals. Of course, 3 of them were penalties. But yeah, I mean, the final chances were not getting created. The attack, though we were trying to, gather a string of passes, we were too slow, and hence we hardly reached the the
Okay,
third
final third, yeah.
of the field. So that was, I mean, not very good to watch. And the three mistakes, the three penalties, basically, I think two of them were because of the use of hands. So I mean, there were some very basic mistakes throughout the
Yeah,
match, and it's difficult to, you know, have a single reason for that defeat and for such a performance. I think it was a combination of factors. So there is hardly any stability at the back. The defenders keep on
yeah,
changing. There is no leadership at the back. I mean, we saw our captain getting replaced in the 52nd minute.
yeah.
So I don't know. These things, they do not weigh very nicely on the players on the field. And honestly, when the penalties were awarded, I am very confident every time that Ederson is not going to save that.
Okay, yeah,
No. So of course he's good with the ball. He's good with the long passes and all, sure. But does he have the instincts to save? I know it's getting difficult for the keepers day and day with the new rules coming in. But really a combination of factors. And then again, we have some of our key players injured. I was kind of confident before the match, and even when we played
yeah.
against Wolves, that it's okay. We have still a good number of players on the pitch, but somehow and somewhere we felt the need of a Jesus or a Aguero
Agreed.
at
Yeah,
the
I
front.
think you were missing a central striker there a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. And so really getting some basic things right, and hopefully we can get the basics right, have our players back, and perform better.
that's a interesting point that you brought up, Navi, regarding the defense, right? So I think Laporte is expected is now will be back, and you've just announced a signing of Ruben Diaz, right?
Yes.
So what are your expectations from Ruben? I think he's the right center back in the team. So, what are your
Yes.
expectations of Ruben, and do you think there will be more signings? Because there was at least an expectation from, I think, City fans of a better transfer market performance. What would you say on that?
Yeah. So firstly, happy to see Ruben
Yeah,
Dias. I mean, we did spend around 68 million or
yeah, yeah.
something, but we had Otamendi also leave. Uh, and from what I've seen and read, he could be the replacement for
Okay,
Company, considering he brings a kind of leadership on
yeah,
the pitch. So that would be nice. And also, you know, it would be necessary to him forming a proper partnership with Ake as the two central
okay,
defenders. And he has that kind of aura. Even in his intro video, it was nice to see someone being so serious. And I mean, we are actually looking at anything small, even the smallest light we are
yeah,
catching on to currently. That is the situation, sadly, as far as the defense is
okay,
concerned. So yeah, noticing some small things and all, but I think it was good to see him, and hopefully he can. And he's not carrying any injuries with him, so hoping he'll start early. And about some any other signings, I think because of the way because of the way Mendy played in the last two
yeah.
matches, we are again thinking of having a left back. But I think it is difficult, very difficult in the last few days. Hardly 4 or 5 days remaining. It would be very difficult to have a new signing.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I think left back has been a problem. I don't think it's ever been solved for City. They've always been using someone or the other as a makeshift there. You did spend big on Mendy, but I
Yes,
think he's never been fit enough. And yeah,
true.
interesting. So you have a, I would say, a big game for at least Pep next this weekend against Leeds. He's facing Marco Bielsa, who's I think one of his, you could say, spirit coaches, right? Influences.
Yeah.
Um, are you expecting any changes? Are you expecting Ruben Diaz to start from the beginning, or any returns from the injury list? Are we expecting any? And any challenges that you're expecting? How different would a challenge be Leeds be to a, let's say, a Leicester, right?
Yes. So knowing the way Leeds play and knowing the way Leeds have played since they joined the Premier League also, I hadn't really watched them when they were in the championship. It is not the ideal game to go to after a 2-5 defeat.
Yeah.
So it would be interesting to watch, and also having Ruben Dias would help, but it would be better if he takes at least the international break. I mean, he uses the international break to gel with the team and know the tactics and all rather than rushing him. But if we are able to play well and in the best case win the match against Leeds, it would act as a very good mentally it would be great for the players as well as Pep, because it's not Leeds definitely not an easy
Yeah.
team to play against. So it would be a huge thing to win coming, especially after the defeat we had. And I hope we have more continuous and quick attacks, and
Okay.
we keep the possession. And you know, I think and Bernardo Silva has started training,
Yeah.
so if he joins in, it would be a good addition to the midfield.
Okay. Interesting. Thank you so much for your time, Naveen. It was lovely talking to you, and hopefully you don't have to. Well, at least I wouldn't hope, but as a fan, you would be hoping
Yeah,
that don't have to see 5 goals scored again against City.
definitely,
But I'd
definitely,
surely
yeah,
be rooting for the opposite.
sure.
Thank you for your time. Right. Next up, we head down to London to talk to my good friend Manan. Hi, Manan. How are you?
Hey Sushant, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I don't think speaking to you over the weekend. I don't think you're in a good mood.
You said it. You said it right.
So I think I'll let the stage be yours by just asking you what did you think of the performance over the weekend?
It was a classic game of two halves, wasn't it? First half,
Yeah.
atrocious, abysmal defending, individual mistakes again, a collective failure for the third goal. There was a midfield disaster with both Conte and Kovacic, getting caught out in the cold time and time again by Livermore Sawyers of all people. And, it gave the likes of Pereira and Diangana a free run at Chelsea's fullbacks. And
Yeah.
obviously, they're going to target Alonso. Why not? Marcus
Yeah.
Alonso, the gift giver that he is. Alonso is a ticking time bomb in a back four. Let's be very honest, and I think
Yeah.
everyone knows that. Everyone in the all the Premier League
I think
fans
even
know that.
he. I think
Marcus
even he
Alonso,
knows
as
that.
yeah, I think even he knows that. As good as he is in a back five, probably the best wing back in the world, but he is not suited for a back four. Then, of course, then Thiago Silva comes in with a Gerrardesque slip. My apologies, of Obro, did not mean to offend you, of course. And then a shocking lack of communication for Kyle Bartley's goal. Reece James playing alongside that is training ground stuff. You do not do that in a Premier League game. You do that, you get punished, and that's exactly what happened. Then again, then second half, as you would expect, Lampard had to throw the caution to the wind. And when you go full throttle, there's always a chance to score goals with West Brom sitting deep in the half. And obviously, Callum Hudson-Odoi's pace helped, and a switch in formation, and all of the tactical factors came into the picture. And at the end of the day, while obviously I'm glad that we were able to salvage a point, the only frustration I have is it shouldn't have come to that in the first place. It should have been an easy 3 points against a newly promoted side. But well, this is Premier League. You can't take any side for granted.
Agreed. Surely, yes, you can't. So, Manan, one point I would like to discuss with you regarding the performance was how Chelsea set up, because I think it was slightly different from what we've seen previous in the initial game weeks. Right? You had Tammy start as a central striker, and Werner was there along with him, and then you had two sort of, I could say, Kai and Mount playing as almost as attacking midfielders, you could say, right behind them.
Mhm.
So what did you think you started off with the right setup? Was it the right thing to throw in a new formation in a Premier League game, or did Lampard think that West Brom would be an easy fixture to try that out? What do you think about
I could probably speak on this topic for a couple of hours. It is evident, that long-term solution Lampard will alternate between a 4-2-3-1 and a 4-3-3.
that?
Right now, with the lack of proper wide men that we have, wingers, Pulisic and Ziyech out with
Yeah,
injuries. There's no out and out winger except Callum Hudson-Odoi, of course. So that leaves Lampard with a problem. He has to rely on fullbacks to give the width, and that's why you are seeing sort of this bizarre 4-2-2-2 formation that he's
yeah,
started the three games with. and that sort of stifles the strengths of Havertz and Werner, or to a certain extent, I believe, because they are more effective when when players are coming out from wide. Then Havertz or someone like Havertz can make those darting runs, and Werner can play off maybe either. I mean, either a central striker you said like Tammy.
Yeah.
So it's a bizarre setup, to be very honest. And again, so in a 4-2-3 with Conte and Kovacic, sorry, in a 4-2-2-2 with Conte and Kovacic in a double pivot, that is not the best of tactics in my view.
Okay.
Predominantly because both players are instinctively programmed to dart forward at every given opportunity, and that leaves space behind, and,
Yeah.
and then completely your back four gets exposed, which Chelsea's back four, it's a recipe for disaster. And
Yes.
and to be fair, the Baggies exploited that to perfection in that first half. I think more or less in the long run, 4-3-3 is the way to go. But then you can. I mean, if with a proper setup, I think Lampard has to will alternate between a 4-2-3-1 and a 4-3-3. The only thing that sort of concerns me at this point is Lampard doesn't have a settled system. He doesn't
Yeah.
have a settled starting 11. Of course, I mean injuries haven't helped, but from a Chelsea perspective, the sooner he stops the tinkering, the better, is what my view would be.
Yeah. I think Liverpool fans can tell you all about tinkerers as managers, right? So
Of course.
interesting. So yeah, I think we can delve a bit more on Lampard's certain specific choices. We discussed his formation. Thiago Silva captain game week one for him at least. And as in, do you think that was the right decision? As in, considering the other senior members of the team that are there, like Aspilicueta, Conte. Uh,
It it was a bizarre decision in my view, especially when you consider the fact that Thiago Silva speaks little to no English at this point.
yeah,
I get it to a certain extent because if you're not going to play a Jorginho or a Aspilicueta, Thiago Silva becomes sort of a natural choice for that captain's armband with his vast experience in the game and at the top level for so long.
yeah,
Conte is not your typical, captain material. He's a silent player who goes about his
leader.
business. He's
Yeah,
not vocal, so that is not something that you would want in a captain. I don't get it because I believe Aspilicueta should have started that game instead of Alonso, and
yeah,
for obvious reasons, which we
yeah.
found out in the game.
Yes, yes.
So it makes it bizarre. But then, considering the setup and the starting 11 Lampard chose it, I'm not surprised that he went ahead with Thiago Silva as the captain.
Okay. Interesting that you talk about Aspilicueta replacing Alonso, especially after a reported bust up that happened, I believe, post match between Lampard and
Hmm.
Alonso.
Yeah.
Would you like to chime in on that? As in, if, with any,
So if that is true, if Alonso really did, went off from the dressing room directly into the coach towards the game, that is unacceptable from a team perspective. If true, I am glad that Lampard put him in his place. I am glad that Lampard gave him the hairdresser or hair dryer treatment that Sir Alex was famous for.
yeah.
And I think some players were getting too comfortable at the club. I think
Okay.
Alonso was one of them. So the good thing is I don't think Alonso is an influential figure in the dressing room, so I'm not too concerned about a potential mutiny or something on those lines.
Yeah.
But then again, it's never good to read these news or these leaks coming out of the club that everything is not rosy behind the scenes. So it always sort of causes a concern among the fans.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's where we stand at this point.
Yeah. I think such news generally tend to happen more often when you're on the losing side.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head there.
Yeah. So, looking ahead to the Palace game, right? You've already mentioned that you expect at least that Aspilicueta should play at left back. Uh, so even Crystal Palace, just like West Brom, right? They have some really fast attackers who can,
Hmm.
who if you give them some space, that they can really terrorize you. As a United fan, I can attest to that.
Of
Uh,
course.
right. So, what would you say are some of the important matchups on the field for that game?
I think it all depends on how both the teams line up. To be honest, I have personally been very impressed with Eberechi Eze. He's
Yeah.
been a very, very astute acquisition by Palace, and of course, Will Zaha has been again, lighting it up. for Roy Hodgson. So I think the matchups, if of course they play Jordan Ayew in the middle and these two guys, Zaha and Eze on the flanks,
Yeah.
I think it gives Lampard a sort of a headache because I would want Reece James to start from fullback because Palace playing a deep block. I think James's set piece deliveries and his crosses become that much more important. And I personally was very impressed with the way Chilwell played against Tottenham yesterday in the beg your pardon, Carabao Cup fourth round, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would see James and Chilwell as the first choice starters. Then again, it depends on uh, whether Lampard chooses to go for Jorginho in the middle or not
Yeah.
because of the whole again captaincy shebang that we just mentioned about.
Yeah.
So yeah, it sort of gives Lampard a headache. I personally, from my point of view, I would probably go with James and Chilwell. And in the battle that you mentioned, I think it'll be a very interesting one between James and Zaha. Last time, of course, the Englishman came out on top, this time it's a whole different proposition altogether.
Interesting. Yes, it totally is. So I think before I ask you the final question, I think our good friend Karthik has a question for you, and if I don't let him ask you that question, I think he won't let me be back on this podcast.
I'm pretty sure
So,
what is the questions, but yes, let's please hear it.
so yeah, Karthik, go ahead.
Manan, why, man? Why are you avoiding me?
I think you know that answer, Karthik. Come
It's
on.
almost been 20 hours, dude. Come on. That's all right. That's all right.
Yeah, I mean, there's no easy answer to this, and there's no way I can answer to this without using profanity, which I want to avoid on this podcast.
Yes, let's avoid.
Yeah, so let's leave it at that, shall we?
Yeah, that's okay.
Any football related questions from anyone?
No, but Manan, I just have one thing to say. Don't be shy. Cry some more.
Of course. I've
Okay.
dried my eyes. Yeah.
I think Karthik, you've had your chance. We will speak to you in a short while. Manan, before I let you go, one final question: do you expect? I mean, it's. I think others on the podcast will laugh at me for asking this, but do you expect any other transfer business from the club?
I think outgoings. I think outgoings will definitely happen. Ross Barkley was a sudden shout today, came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Incomings, I think the only possibility at this stage is Declan Rice. But again, given his price tag and given how late it is in the window and given how West Ham are struggling at this point, I really don't see any incomings unless, of course, something dramatically changes. Maybe we lose to Palace. I don't know. I don't want that to happen, of course. But other than that, I really don't see any incomings. But sure, outgoings will definitely happen.
Nice. Interesting. So how many more outgoings if I were to put you on the spot?
I think Bakayoko is one name that is popping up.
Yeah.
PSG being interested in a loan move. Of course, there were AC Milan as well. So that definitely looks like on the cards that something will happen there. Second one, more from a me not wanting to happen, and would be Kurt Zuma. It is rumored that Chelsea is looking. I mean, would be willing to accept somewhere in the region of 35 to 40 million for him. I don't want that to happen because I think he's currently the best centre back at the club.
Okay.
But yeah, that looks like and probably Ruben Loftus-Cheek on another loan. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Thank you, Aman. Let's hope you don't sign anyone else.
Yeah, that would be my hope as well.
Right. Thank you, Manan. Thank you for your time. Now moving ahead to someone who is really excited about winning a Carabao Cup game, Karthik. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Sushant.
How are you,
What's up?
Karthik?
Yeah, pretty good, man. Feeling pretty good.
Yeah, I think some of the disappointment from over the weekend would have evaporated after last night.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, 100%. Yeah, you still go back and think about the what ifs, but I still think yesterday's win is going to be a big boost for players and fans alike.
Yeah. So let's talk about the disappointing game first. Your thoughts on the match? I believe you have a lot to say about it with regards to the missed chances and also especially the iffy moment at the end. 3-letter word.
Yeah.
I think it'll be so.
Yeah, I mean, see, I honestly want to go on a big rant, but there's no point because I think there are enough people ranting, and what's interesting is the rant is not coming only from Tottenham Hotspur. I mean, it's coming from players, ex-managers, current managers,
Even
as well as ex-referees and referees. Yeah. So I think that should be that should speak for itself in terms of how inconsistent the rules are and how illogical they are, basically.
Yeah.
But coming to the match, I think finishing was awful. I think that more than the VAR, what I'm really disappointed is about the missed chances that we've had. I think Carl Darlow was excellent, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know what's with Newcastle's keepers and having the game of their lives against Spurs.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean Tim Krul did it. Then we had Dubravka who's done it, and then now it's Carl Darlow with 11 saves. So.
Yeah.
I mean, full credit to him, but yeah, it should have been 3-0 in the first 10 minutes, man. I mean, irrespective of how the decision went, the game should have been buried in the first 10 minutes, and they didn't.
Yeah.
What we had about 23 shots in total, and 12 of them were on target. One went in, and 11 was saved by Carl Darlow. It's frustrating because Son was extremely lively in the first half. He hit the post twice. And Kane also had, two clear chances. There was Lo Celso's free kick, which probably, inches away from going in.
Yeah.
And, they were left to rue, right? I mean, it's all in their doing. So, but to be honest, I don't know. We have a curious case of Lucas Moura, right? I know he's got, Spurs fans have this euphoria with him of what he's done against Ajax. But I think he's a Mourinho's type player. He's got a plenty of energy. He's got pace and he runs, man. He tracks back. He goes for the tackles. He wins headers.
Yeah.
For someone who's that shot, he does that brilliantly. But unfortunately, there's no end product. I mean, it's evident. I mean, not taking away what of what he's done in the past and the goal that he scored, but it's getting really, really frustrating. And with Son performing so well on one side, Lucas Moura has been underwhelming. And honestly, unless and until we have Bale fit, we don't have any other replacement, right? So, I mean, with so many fixtures, I think he's got enough chances, but I don't see him, utilizing it, and that is partly one of the reason why we couldn't, score. But I'm not going to put blame alone on him, because everyone had equal chances. But yeah, I think I'm sure Jose, as much as he liked to discuss on the VAR, he would also go back and tell the players, right? I mean, it should have been done by then. By the 90th minute, the game should have been sealed.
Agreed.
So yeah, I think players know that. So let's just hope that we bounce back from it.
Yeah, and bounce back you did against Chelsea in the midweek clash, right? I think it was one of the few games in a Carabao Cup that I've seen with such. Even though I think both teams were playing slightly their second string teams, you could say, but even then you had really good quality on the field, right? You had Werner, you had Dembele on your you had Sissoko on your team, right? And you had Harry Kane who came off the bench. Moura was starting. So there was a lot of quality. How did you assess the second performance in the Carabao Cup?
I felt that the first half was sort of underwhelming. It's a completely new. I mean, first of all, Jose went in for a 3-5-2.
Yeah.
All right. He started Reguilon, and Aurier also was a little up front, and we went in with a back three. So it took time for things to fall in place, because I don't remember the last time Spurs played with the exact same back three. So they grew into the game. I think it was unfortunate, Reguilon, he was amazing, man. I mean, I can't stop raving about Reguilon's debut yesterday. But yeah, he was naive. He knew he made a mistake. He gave the ball away, and he was so energetic in terms of recovering that he went in for a sliding tackle, and that led to the goal. Yeah. But keeping that aside, everything else that he's done was amazing. So for me, it's more about how these guys came back from. Came back in the second half, basically. I think Jose must have had one of his team talks again. If you guys go back to the documentary again, there was this term called Jose's intelligent beep. And obviously I can't use the profanity, but I think we saw that. We saw what Mourinho actually wanted to see from his players, and
Yeah.
I'm sure he'll be very very happy with the way players reacted. And to be honest, when it came to the penalties, I was not really confident because we know how dreadful our record has been in terms of penalties, and especially against Chelsea.
Yeah.
But I think he got it pretty spot on. And one more thing, even before we move to the penalties, I think the game changer was the introduction of Højbjerg.
Yeah.
He completely changed the game. I mean, the midfield was so balanced, that things just fell into place, and
Sure.
I think we saw a much more rigid Spurs team in terms of taking on the counter attacks. But yeah, I think the penalties were also pitch perfect. Um,
Yeah.
we,
I think
I
at one point I was worried that everyone was going to hit it on just one side.
exactly. I mean, Chelsea, all the players, everyone from both the teams were just going onto the left side, and you were wondering why are the keepers just
Yeah.
diving towards the left and not to the right. But yeah, I think Harry Kane broke that, and he was the only one. Uh, I think that was a very smart choice again, keeping Kane at number 5.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Jose's tactics were spot on. In fact, so absolutely no fault of his, and I absolutely loved the little run in inside the tunnel, right, along with
Yeah.
Joe
Yeah,
Sacramento.
that was fun.
It was fun to watch. Yeah.
Yeah, first I thought he got angry and he left because of that Hudson Odoi chance, and I was like, why is he leaving this? Like 15 minutes left, and then you hear
Yeah.
the commentators speak about a loo break for Mr. Dyer.
Yeah. You got to do what you got to do, man.
Yeah. As he said, nature's call. So
Yeah.
that's one call you can't hang up on.
Yeah.
So interesting that you talked about Højbjerg and his performance and his impact, right? Since transfers,
Mhm.
are you expecting any other ins and outs before the end of the window? I believe a certain centre back from Inter Milan is being pursued, but what do you think?
I don't know, man. I seriously don't understand because he's just in the starting 11. He started the game against I'm not too sure whom, Brescio. But it's an interesting case. It's not going to be an easy deal. Teams are very well apart in terms of their valuations. Uh, Obviously, Ruben Diaz was a target, but City got him for 63 million, and there's no way that Daniel Levy is going to spend 63 million on a defender. But what I'm worried about is the the backup name that is being surfaced that has surfaced over the last 1 week,
Yeah.
Antonio Rudiger. I'm not too sure, man. I don't know what's going to happen because two things: one, in terms of his ability, I'm not really convinced, and two, it's going to be so weird after all the acquisitions that have happened, previously on, him trying to accuse Spurs supporters. So I really don't see it as a good fit. But I'm not too sure what Jose is thinking because we have enough, Rudiger type of players at the club, and yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I think even I was surprised. I think Manan would be happy with that getting some money for Rudiger, and I'm still not sure how that would work across London.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
thank you, Karthik. I think we'll be coming back to you shortly. I will just be touching base with our favorite Manchester United fan, Shayan, before we come
Sure.
back to you. Yeah,
Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
Shayan, how are you?
Hey, hi, Sushant. Thanks, man. Lovely to be here. Uh, not so great, man. Very honestly, not so great. And I think you and I will be on the same page regarding that.
Yeah,
So yeah.
I think we can still smart from the knowledge that apart from I think Liverpool, we're the only team that won a match this game week. So so I think
I
at the
mean,
end of the day,
taking a
I think
yeah,
3 points do matter.
yeah, true. I mean, but taking a cue from what Obro said, right?
Yeah.
It is best that we stop talking about United, or the lesser we talk about United at the moment. I think it's better for us because it's clearly not looking good as of now.
No, so I don't think our we can have a podcast where we don't talk about United, no matter how much you and I would not want to. So I think
Yeah,
first thing I would want to ask you is what do you think about the match? It's clear from your response so far that you do think we got away with one, and I would 100% agree with you. But apart from that, like, do you what are your thoughts?
I think got away with one is absolutely the right way to describe it. It was, in a fair sense of the word, the game was absolutely uh, extremely poor performance from United. And I can't think of any improvements from the last game, and I can recall your inputs or your suggestions and the issues that you had brought about from our last podcast after the Crystal Palace game, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And I was hoping there would be some changes, some improvements, but very honestly, I could not see many. Um, there was the same issues of a lackey defense, the lack of cohesion between a defense and a midfield, and the forward line, players looking that still that tired, lacking confidence. Um, so I think there is a sense of utter disappointment amongst everyone, and
yeah,
it's palpable amongst the fans across the world. Um, so yeah, I mean, very honestly, I think it was a very disappointing performance. But yeah, so coming back to the game, I think the first one, as I said, I think I was shocked to see Lindelof starting
okay,
after what was a pretty poor performance against Crystal Palace.
yeah,
And some might argue about the fact that there was Bay there in the starting lineup. Then why didn't Solskjaer play him? And the counter to that would be there is a midweek Carabao Cup, but I'm not sure, what is happening in few of the selections that Solskjaer did. What do you do in a situation when your prime center back is not performing, which is Lindelof? Do you prioritize a Premier League game or do you prioritize a Carabao Cup? It looked like he did the prioritizing of the Carabao Cup because Bai was pretty nice, I would say. He most probably wasn't a maverick, but he was definitely better than Lindelof. One might say it was just Luton Town, but then a performance is a performance, and he looked agile. He looked a little sharp. By as you know, he's a pretty rash defender in that sense. He has his moments. He
yeah,
can give away a foul or a penalty, but then I would take an agile defender, someone who's going to give you those blocks, and someone who's absolutely committed against someone like Lindelof, who's clearly under some sort of pressure in terms of performance, in
yeah,
sticking to a center forward, in making those turns which are necessary, in going with the player till the last moment, and either sticking a foot out or your head out or whatever, even your tongue
yeah,
out to just get the ball blocked. So I definitely go for someone like that, but then I think Ole has his preferences. That that also brings me to an aspect which I think I was deliberating a lot over the weekend, that Ole might not be having a lot of confidence in the players,
yeah,
in the setup that he's going with. Uh, a prime contributor to that would be the selection of Paul Pogba. Paul Pogba, plays in a uh, part of the pitch which is supposed to be the most important in a football match, apart from
yeah,
obviously for a forward to score goals. So the anchor midfielder that we all know, right, who
yeah,
controls a game with everything from what he does, the linking of defense to midfield to attack, and breaking up play.
yes, yes,
He's supposed to do all that. He was recruited 5 years back to play an important part, but I mean, he hasn't lived up to that name of his or the reputation.
not at all, yeah,
Uh, the striking feature about his selection was, and this came after the game from I think the press conference, is Solskjaer's admission that he is still not up and running. He's still recovering from the COVID-19 infection that he had.
yeah,
Now, my question at the moment is, are you Are you bringing a player into a game which is a professional game, and you're fighting for the top three, top four, or even the title spot at this moment? Are you giving a player those minutes, whatever 60 or 30 or whatever it is, and you're trying to keep make him up to speed in that sense? You can do that at Carrington, right? You can ask him to train for maybe a couple of hours more on the weekends, or extra matches, some sort of thing. Why would you do that on a match day against a team, especially when you have lost the previous game? And another shocker would definitely derail the season, even if it's at the very nascent stage. You do not do that. So he
Especially,
played for 60.
especially I
Yes,
think
yeah.
with now that we've recruited Van de Beek and we also have Fred, so it's not like there aren't options.
Exactly. I mean,
Yeah,
exactly. He substituted Fred at I think 63, 64 odd minutes.
yeah,
So, uh, I mean, where's the thought process, or where is the logic behind it? You just can't keep on playing him with the hope that okay, Paul Pogba is going to get fit and he's going to control the game. That's not happening.
yeah,
That is just poor thought process. I mean, forget about football skills and everything. I mean, as you said, what is Van de Beek doing till the 90th minute, sitting and warming the bench?
yeah.
You have acquired him. He's a top class player. He's supposed to, bring a sort of rejuvenation to that midfield. What is he doing sitting on that bench? Get him in, play him in that center of the midfield. Get him to do all that he's done amazing work with the Ajax and for which you recruited. So I mean, baffling decisions, very honestly. The other point which I'd like to, I think, bring about is Martial. I am pretty shocked at his. I know it's pretty early, just 2 games, but I am seeing a shadow of what Martial was last season. Uh, he, apart from a little bit of trickery here and there, lovely maybe couple of passes between Bruno and him, or maybe Rashford and him, he has not been able to play well
Impose.
at all.
Yeah.
I mean, there has been, I think, cries on social media and from a lot of journalists that what has happened to Martial all of a sudden? Is there some problem going on, or etc. etc. But it was pretty disappointing in both the games that Martial failed to make any sort of impact. I mean, as I said, I think you do not always score goals, but you can
Yeah,
through your movements and through your game sense and reading of the match, you can do a lot more.
yeah,
I think that is an area of real scare for Ole if this continues, considering that the two other strikers that they're going for, Luka Jovic and Edinson Cavani, and with the transfers that I mean, the kind of thing that's happening with the transfers in United, I can be rest assured that none of them are coming in. So it is a pretty scary thought that if Martial doesn't respond in the next few matches, then what's going to happen with that
true, true.
United?
Makes, yeah. Even I'm worried about that. Uh, Going on, I think there was just like the Tottenham game and um the other games around the game week. There was a VAR drama at our game as well, right? There was a
True.
I think most of the decisions given were correct, but I think one of the most controversial ones was the penalty that was cancelled, right? That was chalked off for Brighton, which ended up being a very crucial decision if you look back at the game now. So, what are your thoughts? Did Paul Pogba foul, and was that a penalty, or and maybe even a yellow or a red card for Pogba, or did the referee look at it and make the right decision at the end?
I think it was a correct decision. I mean, correct decision in the sense at the end of the day, not the first one by the referee. And one of those times, I think VAR has played a critical role in the decision making process. And we all have our share of criticizing VAR, but then you feel good when technology does come into the picture and plays an important role. So the incident of Paul Pogba, if you look at it from a proper game sense, the when a move happens like that, and you're tracking back, or you're trying to block the forward or the attacking midfielder, it's pretty. It happens at a very frantic pace, and at that moment, if unless the referee is just beside you or on top of you, it's very difficult to understand those little trips on the ankle or that nudge or whatever it happens, because the referee at most often times they are 15 to 20 yards away, sometimes even more in a game. So the similarity between Pogba's incident and Bruno Fernandes's incident, which led to the first, I think, penalty, was very similar. But the only difference was, I think, Bruno brushed against the forward, and there was proper foul. And unless VAR had checked the Pogba incident, they wouldn't have noticed that the forward's arm was behind Pogba, and that was the one which led the referee to give the decision against the forward, right? So those type of calls are very difficult. I mean, it's difficult for the referee. It's difficult for the linesman also
Yeah.
being that far. And VR for once I think played a good role in making a successful call. So for me, it wasn't a foul. That happens in a game when you're trying to block it. So yeah, good decision. Not a foul.
Okay, interesting. So before I bring Karthik in for the last topic of discussion for the big game over the weekend, I just put you on the spot here, right? So you just have to give me a straightforward answer. How many transfers are you expecting United to complete? And the big question: do you think Jadon Sancho will line up after the international break on the right wing for United?
It's pretty interesting. I think with just what today was on a Wednesday, right? The transfer closes on Monday.
Yeah.
They have already rejected one. They are on the process of bidding a higher amount. But the problem right now is, even let's say Manchester United bid 120. The problem they will face now is Dortmund can easily say that you have taken the entire transfer window. Why should we let go of our important player? Because we do not have a replacement, and we are also fighting for the Bundesliga, and we are in the Champions League and etc. So
Right.
why would we dispose of one critical player who's with his assists, with his goals? Why would we let him go? You have taken all the maritime in the world. Now
Yeah.
you deal with your systems and everything. So Jadon Sancho looks extremely tough. If it happens, it will be a miracle, and most probably Ed Woodward will be dancing in joy in his room. But I don't see that happening, very honestly. Dembele, I think they are in talks. Again, that is a difficult proposition because the player himself doesn't want to come to another club.
Yeah.
He's happy with Barcelona. The most probable incoming that I can see is Alex Telles,
Yeah.
the left back from Porto. Looks like he might come in, although there is a difference of 10 million or some 8 million valuation right now. So that is the only one that I am looking forward to. Also, I think being a defender, I'm looking forward to one who scores some 16, 17 odd goals in a season. So that would be a lovely acquisition for United. Outgoings, I think we can be pretty sure that Andres Pereira has gone out. I think that's almost done. Smalling, I think I have a feeling that he will go out in the next couple of days, or at least till the time the window closes. Not
Yeah.
sure about Dallo because I think United want a permanent deal, but AC Milan I think want to take him on a loan. So
Yeah.
not sure about the Dallo. Yeah.
Interesting. So I think we can now bring in Karthik. We have a big game to look forward to where Jose Mourinho returns once more. What are you most looking forward to for the next match?
I'm definitely not looking forward to Region against Aaron Van Bissaka.
Yeah.
I'm dreading that fact right now. I think he
Yeah.
tormented us in Europa. By the looks of it, he's settled in pretty nicely. Yesterday, I didn't watch the game, but whatever little I got to see him on the highlights, he was pretty damn good. That is, I think, one fear that I have right now, that he's going to make a lot of trouble on that left hand side and United right hand side. And Van Bissaka wasn't that great either against
Yeah.
Brighton and Hove Albion. He had his share of problems. So I clearly see that left hand side or the right hand side causing a lot of trouble to United. The other one, which I think KV also mentioned some time back, was Højbjerg. I think he's been absolutely brilliant in that midfield. He's anchored that midfield brilliantly. He's not someone who's just disrupting the play. He's doing some lovely passing. He's linking certain attacks pretty well. I think he's going to be tasked with Bruno Fernandes if he plays in the number 10 role, and that might create a lot of havoc in that United midfield. So these are a couple of important battles that I see. Apart from obviously, if Lindelof plays and Maguire being there, and they are going to be up against Harry Kane. So I'm dreading right now about the prospect of Sunday.
Karthik. So Shine surely seems to be worried about the Tottenham lineup and players that you've got. Are there any United players that worry you, or are there any Tottenham players that worry you?
Yeah, man. I actually, but before that, everyone should be informed that we are playing 3 games this week. We're done with the Carabao Cup. We play, the final game of our Europa qualification, and then it's going to be back. So it's going to be back-to-back games, and mind you, most of the players would have played 2 90-minute games by then. Okay, so there's definitely going to be fatigue. So I am not really looking forward to United at this time. Given how the results were, they will try to come back stronger. They know that the players are tired. They will not be able to give 100%. So knowing all that, I'm sort of expecting United to sort of attack, all right, and expecting Spurs to sit back a little, absorb the pressure, because I think over the last couple of games they've been doing that fairly well. But what I believe is, I'm expecting United to start with Matic, Pogba, and Fernandes. So it's going to be a similar system for Spurs as far as unless Jose thinks otherwise. There's going to be Højbjerg, who's going to be in a similar position to Matic, and I think how Bruno and Pogba will connect. I think the battle over there lies in the midfield, to be honest. So Ndombele and Lo Celso is a similar pairing, and what happens between this pairing will define the game as per me, because I'm sure both the defenses are sort of leaky and error prone. So but what will define the game is who's got a better midfield, who does well on that day. So there'll be a lot of running, and I'm sure Spurs will have a couple of tired legs. So I am thinking that United have a good chance to strike on the counters and keep that pressure and wait for that mistake that which is inevitable, right? Considering the backline that we've had. So sort of they are in a driving seat going into the game.
So can both of you end with a prediction for the match? How do you expect the match to go?
I think it's going to be a one.
I think I'm going to save my prediction so that we do it just before the game. I don't want to reveal my bets right away, but I think United are. I think they'll go for a win. I'm not going to predict the scoreline, but yeah.
Thank you both of you for your time, and I personally will be hoping that United do win. So I'm going to be hoping for a bad week ahead for Karthik. Thanks, guys. So that brings us to the end of the show. The next week promises to be another humdinger of battles. As we've already discussed, the big one is, of course, Manchester United, who face up to Tottenham. Chelsea will host Crystal Palace, and Man City travels to Leeds United on Saturday. The big games on Sunday include United Tottenham, and also Arsenal, who will host Sheffield United, and Liverpool, who will be traveling to Aston Villa. Keep following us on all our social media channels. You can find us at the 6 Yards Pod on Instagram and Twitter. Thank you for listening.